911, what's your emergency? Yes, there's a man trespassing on my son's future property. He won't leave, and it's distressing the community. We're with the HOA. Please send officers now. Her voice crackled with authority and delusion. I watched her from behind my screen door, arms folded, boots planted firm on the old wooden floor of my front porch. There she stood, Tracy Hargrove, visor pulled low, clipboard in hand like she was leading a FEMA operation. Except this wasn't a disaster zone. It was my land, my ranch, Hollow Creek, which had been in my family for nearly 70 years. I hadn't said a word yet. I didn't have to. My mere presence was enough to set her off. Her eyes locked onto mine through the mesh. My son, she continued into the phone, has blueprints ready. He's going to develop this place into a sustainable eco-community. And this squatter refuses to vacate. Squatter. That word hit harder than I expected. Not because it had any truth. I had the deed, the tax records, the original opt-out from the HOA back in '93, but because it showed just how far she was willing to go. I stayed calm. My heartbeat didn't. Just beside me, my old steer Gus let out a low grunt, sensing the tension. He wasn't tied up. He never was. Gus didn't need a leash, he just knew where home was. Tracy kept talking, waving that fake HOA badge around like it had any legal power. And then the flashing lights showed up. 2 sheriff cruisers rolled up the gravel path, sirens silent, but lights spinning red and blue across the oaks. Tracy turned with a dramatic gasp, her entire posture shifting as if she were the victim in some suburban thriller. Behind her stood her son, Miles Carver, arms crossed, chin raised like he was about to close a multi-million-dollar land deal. Never mind the guy still lived with his mother and had been kicked out of 3 jobs in 6 months. I stepped out onto the porch. "Afternoon, officers," I said calmly. The taller deputy approached slowly, one hand resting near his belt. "You Caleb Bishop?" "That's me. We got a call about a land dispute. Claims of unlawful residence on HOA property." "Right," I said, suppressing a laugh. "Let me guess, her?" Tracy marched forward before the deputy could speak. "He's refusing to comply with development plans. My son has full intent to build here. We've submitted a zoning interest." The deputy raised an eyebrow. "Ma'am, please step back. We'll handle this." He turned to me. "Do you have documentation for the property?" "Yes, sir." I reached inside, grabbed the folder I'd kept in a drawer for decades. Title deed, boundary surveys, tax receipts, and most importantly, a notarized exemption letter from 1993, signed by the original HOA council stating that Hollow Creek Ranch was not, and never would be, under HOA jurisdiction. He flipped through the papers, nodding slowly. Tracy didn't like that. "Don't let him con you!" she shrieked from behind the gate. "This land is community-bound. My son's project could change lives. He's a certified eco-designer," Miles added. "He's not even using the land properly. It's mostly weeds and cows." Gus let out another grunt, right on cue. The deputy sighed and looked at his partner. "Looks like everything's in order here." But Tracy wasn't done. She stormed toward the deputy and shoved his arm. "You can't just ignore this," she snapped. "The HOA has rights." "Ma'am," he said, taking a step back, "do not touch an officer again. This is your final warning." And then she dropped the bombshell. "Fine. Then I'll file for emergency jurisdiction under community redevelopment codes. And by Friday, we'll have him evicted." "Evicted? From my own ranch?" I stared at her in silence. But behind my eyes something ignited. Because this woman wasn't just bluffing, she genuinely believed that if she yelled loud enough and threw around enough acronyms, she could steamroll over legal ownership and history. As the deputies returned to their cruisers, I didn't say a word. But in that moment, standing on my porch, I made myself a promise. If she wanted a fight, she'd get one. But it wouldn't be in the form of yelling, or screaming, or vandalism. It would be documents, cameras, truth, and fireproof fences. And when the firestorm came, she'd be the one running for cover. Because this wasn't just a dispute over a piece of land anymore. This was a war for legacy. And Tracy Hargrove just declared it. The morning after the deputies left, I figured Tracy would back off. Most people would have taken the hint. Most would have at least paused after making a scene in front of law enforcement. But not her. By 9 a.m., there was a knock, not on my door, but on my mailbox. A hard thud-thud, followed by the sharp creak of the iron gate being pushed open without permission. I stepped outside and there she was again, standing right at the threshold of my property like she owned it. "Good morning, Mr. Bishop," she said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. In her hand was a laminated badge, golden letters printed above a plastic HOA-style logo that read, "Golden Pines Community Council, Senior Compliance Liaison." She held it up like she was with the FBI. "You're trespassing," I said plainly, nodding toward the private property sign 6 feet from her left shoulder. "I'm here in an official capacity," she replied, ignoring me entirely. "As of last night, the board met and agreed to formally incorporate Hollow Creek Ranch into our jurisdiction." I stared at her, expression flat. "You don't have that authority." "We do," she snapped, flipping through a stack of papers. "According to Article 14C of the Golden Pines Community Expansion Framework, any bordering property posing aesthetic or functional disruption can be reviewed for voluntary integration." I didn't even blink. "Voluntary," I said. "And I didn't volunteer. You'll be receiving our new resident packet in the mail shortly," she continued, "including your first set of compliance guidelines. That barn has to go, by the way. And livestock fencing is subject to our updated height standards." She actually had the audacity to wink. "Welcome to the community." I didn't say a word. I just walked back inside and let the screen door slam shut behind me. The packet showed up the next day, stuffed in a bright yellow folder labeled, "Urgent, non-compliant property action required." Inside were 32 pages of made-up regulations. Grass length limits. No livestock after dusk. Mandatory mailbox upgrades. Eco-compatible. Structures only. And of course, a clause about voluntary donations to the HOA Development Fund. I laughed out loud, until I didn't. Because things escalated faster than I expected. 2 days later, I found a giant wooden sign planted at the edge of my field. The paint was still wet. "Future site of Carver Eco Housing, coming 2025. Sustainable living. Inspired by nature. Sponsored by Golden Pines Community Council." My hands balled into fists. I ripped it out of the ground, tossed it into the shed, and reviewed the footage. Sure enough, Miles had dragged it down the gravel road himself around 4 a.m., duct-taped it into place, then posed for a photo, smiling like a developer on opening day. I wasn't amused. I emailed the video file to a private archive I'd started titled, "HOA Incursion, Day by Day." It didn't stop there. That same weekend, my irrigation system stopped working. Sprinklers sputtered. Lines hissed. The flow meter flatlined. I went to the main valve and found the pressure line /clean. Deliberate. Not wear and tear. Not animal damage. Sliced. Later that night, Gus didn't come when I called for evening feed. I searched the pasture in near panic, flashlight sweeping across tall grass, under moonlight, and finally found him standing near the old hay storage. Spooked. Breathing fast. The south gate was open, a gate I always latched shut. I checked the camera. There it was, Miles again. Entering at dusk. Looking around. Twisting the latch open, tossing feet over the fence, probably hoping Gus would wander off. That was the night I installed motion sensors. Every pasture. Every entrance. And an external alarm that connected straight to my phone. I didn't have to wait long for it to trigger. 3 nights later, 2:48 a.m., I bolted upright to the sound of a soft ping on my phone. Motion detected, north barn exterior. I pulled up the feed. And there he was, Miles, belly to the ground like a soldier on a covert mission, crawling toward my barn with a long metal pipe and what looked like a toolbox duct taped shut. I hit the floodlights. The yard lit up like a prison yard. Miles froze, caught in the blinding glare, like a raccoon in a trash can. Then he bolted, but not before tripping over a coil of hose and face-planting into a wheelbarrow. By the time I got out there, he was gone, but not fast enough. He left the pipe behind, along with the taped-up toolbox, filled with clamps, screws, and a thermal pipe cutter. He was trying to tap into my underground water line. Why? Sabotage? Fixing something? I didn't care. I called the sheriff. When the deputy arrived, he reviewed the footage, took photos of the tools, and jotted down notes. "That's criminal trespass," he said, flipping his notebook closed. "But he's going to say he was offering to repair something." "I didn't ask," I said. "And he wasn't invited." Sure enough, the next morning Tracy was back, this time yelling through a megaphone from her car at the edge of my property. "My son is a certified irrigation technician. You should be thanking him." I didn't respond. But Gus did. He walked up to the fence and let out the deepest, most disapproving moo I'd ever heard. And I swear, I saw Tracy flinch. Comment 1 if you'd have called the sheriff earlier. Comment 2 if you'd have waited like Caleb did. I thought that would be the end of it. After Miles got caught sneaking around my barn with a pipe cutter, and after Tracy's bizarre megaphone defense, I half expected them to vanish for a few weeks. Maybe lick their wounds, regroup, or find a new victim. But I underestimated just how far they were willing to go. 5 days later, I got a certified letter from the county zoning office. I opened it on the porch, my fingers already tensing. The language was formal. Cold. Clinical. Subject: Land Review Request. Potential reclassification for community development use. Per citizen petition and HOA request #GP2217, Hollow Creek Ranch has been flagged for consideration under Colorado's Community Redevelopment and Eco-Integration Initiative, CREI. I read it 3 times before I processed what it meant. They weren't just harassing me anymore. They were trying to rezone my land. And worse, Tracy was using real municipal loopholes. The kind of obscure code buried in dusty planning commission handbooks that only people who had once worked in local government would know. I remembered what she told me weeks earlier. I used to work with city planning. I'd laughed it off then. Now it wasn't funny. She had filed a legitimate petition to reclassify my land for community eco-housing development, and if the county approved it, she could claim a legal basis for absorption into the HOA's jurisdiction. It wouldn't happen overnight, but it was real. I stood there staring at the letter, my pulse slow but heavy. They were playing the long game. And that's when I knew, if I didn't start playing offense, not defense, I was going to lose everything. That night, I pulled out a dusty old notebook from a drawer in the office. Inside was a list of names and phone numbers, folks I'd served with, worked with, grown up with. Half of them were out of state, retired, disconnected. But one name stood out, Jenna Rowe. She and I had gone to high school together back in Fort Collins. She'd been the loudest kid in every class, never afraid to challenge a teacher or call out a bully. Last I heard, she was working as an investigative reporter for a local news station about 40 miles east. I found her number online, crossed my fingers, and called. She picked up on the second ring. "Caleb Bishop?" she said. "Well, I'll be damned. You still breathing out there?" "Barely," I replied. "Got time to hear about a crazy HOA trying to steal my ranch?" "You just said the magic words." 3 days later, Jenna rolled up in a dusty SUV with a cameraman, a drone, and a grin like a shark who smelled fresh scandal. We spent the afternoon filming. She had me walk her through the timeline, from Tracy's first HOA badge, to Miles' break-ins, to the zoning letter. I showed her the folder of laminated threats, the video of Gus nearly wandering off, the irrigation sabotage, and the sign for the fake eco-housing project. She nodded, writing quickly, her eyes wide with each new revelation. "You're sitting on a gold mine of stupidity," she muttered. It's starting to feel like a war zone, I said. But one where they're wearing khakis and filing forms. We ended with a segment right in front of my barn. Gus wandered into frame, sniffed the mic, and nearly knocked the camera over. Jenna laughed. He might be our secret weapon. She titled the story, "The Ranch That HOA Forgot, Until They Tried to Steal It." When it aired that Sunday, the response was instant. People in town recognized Tracy right away. A former zoning assistant turned council queen, who'd rubbed more than a few people the wrong way. The footage of her badge went viral on the local Facebook groups. But what really hit home was the night cam video of Miles sneaking into my barn, toolbox in hand. And the clip of Gus tied up in the old chicken coop, whimpering quietly in the dark. That broke people. Within 48 hours, I received dozens of emails, messages, even handwritten notes. One was from a woman named Gloria who lived a few lots down. "I'm so sorry," she wrote. "Tracy told us you were squatting. We never questioned it. We should've. You're not alone." Another came from an older man named Tom, a Vietnam vet who'd been on the HOA board for 2 years. "I stepped down last month," he wrote. "Can't deal with her anymore. She's poison. If you need me to testify, I will." I was stunned. I'd spent weeks thinking the whole neighborhood was either complicit or blind. Turns out, they were scared. But Tracy? She wasn't backing down. She printed flyers, bright red, bold font. "Community warning, uncooperative property owner endangering future growth." She posted them on mailboxes, bulletin boards, and even taped one to the windshield of my truck while I was inside the feed store. The flyer said I had threatened HOA officials, blocked sustainable development, and kept a dangerous animal on site. Dangerous animal. Gus. I held up the flyer to his face later that night and asked, "You feel dangerous?" He sneezed. But it wasn't funny anymore. Because 3 nights later, I smelled smoke. It was faint, like a campfire far off, but it was wrong. Wrong time. Wrong direction. I stepped outside in my slippers, flashlight in one hand, my phone in the other. And I saw it. A small blaze, right beside the rear wall of the barn. The hay pile was glowing, flickering with orange embers. I ran. Grabbed the fire extinguisher from the porch, hosed it down fast, stomping out the edges with my boots. It hadn't spread far, but if I hadn't caught it, the barn would have gone up. I checked the camera footage with shaking hands. 2:11 a.m. A figure approached from the west field, moving quick, hood pulled up. He was carrying a red plastic gas can. He poured it along the base of the pile, lit a match, and bolted. The camera angle wasn't perfect. The hoodie obscured most of the face. But the gait, the stance, the slight limp on the left leg, it was Miles. I didn't even wait for the sun. I called the sheriff. This time they sent 2 deputies and a fire investigator. They reviewed the footage in silence. One of them let out a slow whistle. "Attempted arson," the older one said. "That's no HOA fine. That's prison time." I nodded but didn't smile. Not this time. Tracy, of course, arrived an hour later in her silk robe and slippers like some sort of deranged monarch. She walked straight up to the deputies and said, "This is nonsense. That man's faking damage to delay the zoning hearing. Would you have let her get this far? Comment yes or no below." The deputy turned toward her and said flatly, "We have your son on camera." She blinked. Once. Twice. Then whispered, "No comment," and backed away. But her silence didn't stop her. Later that afternoon, I found another envelope stuffed in the gate, this one not from the county or the HOA. It was a cease and desist letter. From Tracy's personal lawyer. It accused me of defamation, video surveillance without consent, and get this, animal harassment through misrepresentation. Apparently, she didn't like how Gus had become a minor celebrity online. Several animal rights pages had picked up Jenna's story and made memes of him. One showed Gus standing firm beside me with the caption, "They came for the land. But they didn't count on the cow." I framed it and hung it in the barn. But that night, sitting on the porch, watching the moon rise over the ridge, I didn't feel like laughing. This wasn't over. It was just getting started. And the next time they came for my land, I'd be ready. The morning after the fire, I woke to a string of messages from Jenna. One of them simply read, "I found someone. You're going to want to talk to her." The name was Catherine Liu, a sharp, no-nonsense land rights attorney out of Boulder, formerly with the state's Department of Land Use and Development. Now retired, she took on pro bono cases involving HOA abuse. We spoke over Zoom later that afternoon. She had already seen the news story, read the zoning letter, reviewed the county petition online. "I've seen this exact tactic before," she said, flipping through her notes. "They file under eco-rezoning clauses, use ambiguous maps, then try to coerce or confuse the landowner into voluntary compliance. It's predatory bureaucracy with a friendly face. What can we do?" She smiled. "We fight them in their own arena." That same week, Catherine filed an emergency motion with the County Zoning Commission, citing fraudulent HOA representation, abuse of process, and false annexation attempt. She also included the arson footage, Miles' previous infractions, and Tracy's public statements on camera. The motion called for a complete freeze on the rezoning attempt and a formal investigation into Golden Pines Community Council's legitimacy. The best part? Jenna's second follow-up piece aired that same night, featuring Gus, again, of course, and the story took off like wildfire. But just when I thought I might finally get a breather, they made one final move. And it was their boldest, dumbest, most unhinged stunt yet. It was a Thursday. I had just returned from the feed store, truck bed full of hay bales and repair parts for the barn. As I turned the bend toward my driveway, I saw something that made my stomach drop. A 20-foot U-Haul truck. Not parked by the road. Not idling at the gate. It had driven straight through my front gate, tore the hinges off, and was now sitting in the middle of my yard. Dust still hung in the air. Tire tracks carved deep into the grass. And standing there like she was the mayor of Victory was Tracy, arms on her hips, clipboard in hand, a smug little smile stretching from ear to ear. Miles jumped down from the passenger side, holding what looked like a sledgehammer. I didn't even get out of the truck. I just stopped at the edge of the gravel and stared, watching the madness unfold. Tracy turned to me and shouted, "You've been warned, Mr. Bishop! My son is taking possession of his development site. You refused every opportunity to cooperate." I rolled down my window. "You just drove through private property." She held up a stack of papers, waving them like she was holding the Constitution. "This is our notice of entry. We're beginning phase 1 of community site prep." Miles jogged toward the barn. I threw the truck in park, jumped out, and walked quickly toward the house. Behind me, I heard the crash. One swing of the hammer, and the barn door exploded inward. Old wood splintered, hay bales toppled. Miles let out a war cry. "This is our land now!" I didn't run after him. I didn't yell. I just walked straight into the living room, pulled up the security feed, and hit the stream button. Live on Facebook. Live on YouTube. Live everywhere. Then I reached under the sideboard and hit the panic button, one I'd wired weeks ago directly to the sheriff's department and the county's agricultural property protection line. Outside, Gus stood near the broken gate, watching the whole scene unfold with confused patience. The next few minutes felt like something out of a surreal documentary. Miles slammed through the barn like a toddler on a sugar high, knocking over tools, swinging at shelves, yelling about zoning rights and eco-sovereignty. Tracy walked the perimeter, filming with her phone like she was on a victory tour. "This is going to be our community hub," she narrated. "Over there we'll have gardens. And here maybe a pond." And then, far down the lane, I heard the sirens. 2 sheriff cruisers. 1 county code enforcement truck. And just behind them, because Jenna had tipped them off, a local news van with a massive satellite dish on top. They came in fast. The first deputy stepped out with quiet authority. He surveyed the scene, The broken gate, the U-Haul on my land, Miles still mid-rampage inside the barn, and me standing calmly on the porch with Gus chewing cud beside me. The deputy called out, "Everyone stay where you are. This is now an active investigation." Tracy ran toward him. "You're too late," she said triumphantly. "My son has claimed this land. We have community backing. We're invoking Zoning Transition Clause 12B. The deputy didn't blink. Instead, he pointed toward Miles, now exiting the barn and swinging the sledgehammer into the side of my tractor. "Is that your son?" She nodded proudly. "And you're saying he has rights to this property?" "He's reclaiming it for the community." The deputy turned to his partner and muttered, "Property destruction confirmed." 2 officers moved in, hands on their belts. Miles dropped the hammer. Too late. He was cuffed on the spot, hands behind his back, face pressed to the side of the U-Haul. Tracy screamed, "You're making a mistake. He's an innovator. He's building something beautiful." The deputy looked at me. "You pressing charges?" I nodded. "Every single one." The news crew caught it all. That night, the story ran with the headline, "HOA standoff ends in arrest. Local rancher defends land from unauthorized takeover." The footage of Miles being led away in cuffs, Tracy wailing, and Gus standing stoically beside my tractor became a meme overnight. By Monday, 3 things happened in quick succession. The county dismissed the rezoning petition entirely, citing fraudulent representations and clear evidence of malicious intent. Golden Pines Community Council dissolved, after 5 board members resigned in protest of Tracy's leadership. I received a hand-delivered envelope from the county zoning office. Confirmation of exemption. Hollow Creek Ranch shall remain outside all HOA jurisdictions in perpetuity. I didn't even read the rest. I just framed it. Hung it right above the fireplace in the rebuilt barn, same one Miles tried to demolish. Only this time, it had stronger walls, tighter beams, and a security system with a triple backup feed. As for Tracy and Miles? Miles took a plea deal, criminal mischief, trespassing, and property destruction. He paid a hefty fine and got 12 months probation, plus court-ordered anger management. Tracy? She disappeared for a while. Rumor was she sold her house, moved to New Mexico, and tried to start a new eco-village concept there. God help them. Around here, things settled. Neighbors who had once avoided me started waving again. Tom stopped by with homemade cornbread. Gloria brought peach preserves. And Gus? Well, he got fan mail. One letter from a 4th grade class in Nebraska said, "Dear Gus, you're our hero. You protected your home. Good job, big cow." I hung that too. Sometimes, late at night, I sit on the porch with a coffee in hand, watching the stars stretch over the ridgeline. And I think about how close I came to losing it all, to letting someone else write the final chapter of my story. But in the end, I didn't move. They did. Because this land wasn't just property. It was my past. My peace. My fight. And thanks to one unhinged HOA queen and her delusional prince, I'd proven that even in the age of paperwork and politics, a rancher who stands his ground can still win. Especially if he's got a cow named Gus. If you made it this far, hit subscribe. We've got more wild HOA Karen stories coming. In the end, this wasn't just a story about one stubborn HOA president or her entitled son. It was about something much deeper, the fight to protect what matters. Too often, everyday folks get steamrolled by red tape, empty threats, or people who scream louder instead of standing on truth. But as this story shows, paperwork doesn't beat principle, and power only lasts when good people stay silent. What happened at Hollow Creek Ranch is a reminder that we don't need to shout to win. We need to stand our ground, document everything, and use the tools of the law, the press, and our community to push back. Whether it's your land, your home, your family's legacy, or just your peace and quiet, you have a right to protect it. And if someone tries to take it from you with lies, manipulation, or intimidation, let them come. But make sure they know they're not just trespassing on property. They're trespassing on everything you've ever worked for. And that's a battle worth fighting, every time.